Hey, it's John Hope Bryant, founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Operation Hope. And let me just say for the record that if it wasn't for CRA 1977, I wouldn't be who I am or where I am today. A banker came in my classroom, 1977, I'll say it, from Bank of America. Taught me financial literacy when I was 9 or 10 years old. Home economics class, which doesn't exist anymore, so hopefully CRA modernization encourages somebody to do that again. And I became an entrepreneur because of that. And once again, in 1992, it was Rodney King riots. It's because of Community Reinvestment Act. At that point, it hadn't been modernized yet. That was 1995 when this was before.
That was the last regulation update was 95.
Yeah, so but 1992, still a banker spent time on a line of credit for my new organization that I'm convinced would not have spent time on. It had to be safe and sound, comptroller. By the way, this is the U.S. Comptroller of the Currency, Joseph Otting. We're going to introduce everybody. Those of you who didn't watch part one, go back and watch part one. But we're going to do quick introductions real quickly. This was going to be speed dating on CRA modernization. This is going to be quick. So you got to watch this one. It's 10, 12 minutes. We're done. We out. But I'm convinced that banker would not have spent time, would not have had his team spend time on my loan had it not been, he thought he got CRA credit. It was a $25,000 small line of credit. He would have just walked right past it. No racism, no discrimination, no bias. He just wouldn't have cared. I mean, it's not worth the return on their investment. Because he thought he got CRA credit, he invested time and energy, and he liked me as a person. But he had to have an excuse to do it, a reason, an incentive. We have to make sure, want the audience to know, they are committed to making sure that that incentive for that boutique small dollar loan does not go away with reform and modernization.
Doesn't go away with CRA.
It doesn't go away with CRA. Amen. You're pretty good. You're almost funny. But don't take that. Comptroller of the Currency, I've just introduced him, regulates 70% of all banking assets in America, $12 trillion in assets plus. I've known him for 20 years. And check out the internship program he just created at the OCC, along with the FDIC and several other agencies are now joining the bandwagon.
Yep, CFPB, FHFA, National Credit Union Association. Here in Washington, D.C., roughly 150 students will be sponsored by the federal regulatory agencies.
At $20 an hour.
At $20 an hour.
From the poorest neighborhoods in D.C.
Poorest neighborhoods, and often the kids that perhaps need the second chance is what we focus on.
You get a suit, with clothes.
We give them a clothes allocation, we give them a meal, we give them transportation, and they show up and they become examiners, lawyers, corporate security people, IT specialists, HR. We put them through the job. They learn what it's like to perform those functions.
And
we change those kids' lives.
Yeah, and the mayor of DC just joined the partnership today and infused her enthusiasm.
She's a sponsor of it.
She's a sponsor of it.
Yeah.
She actually said she loved the program and loved him. Gravetta, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm Gravetta Gardenier. I'm Senior Deputy Comptroller for Bank Supervision Policy here at the OCC. CRA policy is in my wheelhouse, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to make a change. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity when you haven't changed the rule in 25 years.
And you come from a very poor neighborhood in North Carolina?
I do. Scotland County, North Carolina, Laurinburg, North Carolina to be exact.
Yeah.
Born and raised, daughter of my high school principal, my mother, and my father was a Presbyterian minister there for 40 years.
And you've been knee-deep in this modernization effort.
For a decade.
Yeah, for a decade, including now.
Including now.
I am Bao Nguyen. I'm the Principal Deputy Chief Counsel at the OCC, and I assist Gravetta in this reform, coming up with the ideas, talking through them, figuring out how we can encourage financial institutions to put more financial resources back into communities that need it the most around the country.
And he's not one of the interns from the program. He actually works at the OCC. he's actually a seasoned attorney who pays his taxes and does mortgages and all that. And then lastly,
I'm Barry Whitus. I'm Deputy Controller for Community Affairs here at the OCC, and I've been administering CRA here at this agency for 20 years, and I can tell you firsthand this rule is ripe for modernization. Banking is a lot different today than it was 20 years ago when we hope to bring a CRA regulation into the 21st century.
and he's a good man. I know Val the least, but I fall in love with his spirit. I know all these people, and I trust them with my life. Now, let's jump into this real quick. Lightning round for CRA modernization. I'm going to say some things. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, and then I'm going to throw questions to you, and then let you answer them in your own voice. As you see, this is unscripted. Nobody has cue cards. So the measurement under the new CRA. Let me just start by saying there will be no gaming of the system here. Any ideas you have or questions you have about can the system be gamed, taken advantage of, put them in your notes, your questions in response to the proposed rulemaking. I'll put them in the comments here, and we'll try to address them in the comments responses here. But I'm convinced that gaming, the door has been locked behind the wall of games, and that is now transparent. For instance, this is not just about a dollar amount, which has been a huge misconception. Here's what they say: units, the number of loans; checks, dollars, the amount of loans; the amount of loans, checks, units. Both are equally important.
Yes.
And data is king. There's a larger assessment area, or areas of assessment. So before, a bank might have had 240 areas, only 40 areas got assessed under CRA reviews.
Right.
Now every one of those 240 areas
Right.
get assessed,
That's right.
get reviewed.
That's
Every
right.
one.
Right.
You hear that? Every one. How can that not be a good thing? There's a performance context, so computers are not going to be running this. It's not going to be AI driven. There'll be examiners who still have the last word
Yes.
Yes.
on the bank's exam. That's called a performance context. Did I get that right?
That's exactly right.
And so they have the ultimate say on what goes in that report. But now it won't take 2 years any longer. It's going to take, I don't know how long, but some reasonable amount of time.
Months versus years.
Months versus
Right.
years. And it's going to be mostly data driven with that overlay of qualitative versus all being qualitative with a little data.
Right.
Right.
And the general public will have much quicker access to the data and be able to make comparisons from bank to bank, how banks are performing in different markets.
It's all transparent.
And it'll be all transparent and will give the community a much greater insight into how much banks are doing to serve their communities.
Yeah, and for no particular reason other than I just thought about it, because I think every good marriage is made of constructive friction. I want to thank Congresswoman Maxine Waters, her committee. I want to thank the members of the Financial Services Committee, the members of all of Congress, and other regulators, community advocates, community groups, people who have said, I don't know if this is right for communities. You got to prove it to me. Come here and talk to me. Respond to this question. I had somebody send me a CRA death letter. Basically says, this is the death of CRA as I know it. Really smart guy. Like, I respect him. I said, look, put it in writing. I'll get an answer for you. We went through the comments, and I was able to see a response to every one of his comments. But he just misunderstood it. So this is so important because now you, with the least words possible, you have everybody on record telling you there ain't no boogeyman. And if it hasn't been solved, they're open to fixing it.
That's right. So like a good point in Mark's letter, he makes some comments about, perhaps he would rather see them strengthened than what they are. So it's not totally like he misunderstood it. He just thought it should be enhanced. We're telling people, give that data to us and let us analyze it in the final review.
Right.
So there's never been an approved list of things that qualify under the Community Reinvestment Act since 1977.
Right.
Right. That's right.
Under modernization, there'll be an approved list of starting with 200 things, and you can add to the things if they're legitimate.
That's right.
Not the things, the list, the
Or
qualified.
you can come into the regulatory community and say, we're thinking about doing this, it's not on the list. Can we get pre-qualified? And we will do that.
Right.
Another misnomer: which areas in qualified opportunity zones get CRA credit? That's shouldn't be allowed.
Not true.
It's not true. It's not allowed.
No, only low and moderate income areas where opportunity zone investments are made are going to qualify for the Community Reinvestment Act.
I'll repeat in John Bryant's simple English. I'm not too smart. You gotta say it real simple for me. If you have a QOZ, qualified opportunity zone, with rich people where he lives, you cannot get CRA credit, Mr. and Mrs. Bank. It has to be in the qualified opportunity zones in CRA areas that are LMI, low to moderate income exclusively.
That's correct.
That's right.
All right. Now let's jump into, I think we covered all that. Let's jump into rewarding complexity and smallness of small business loans as an example, or any kind of loans. The misperception, and I think it was just an open question that hadn't been addressed, is wow, the banker no longer has an incentive to make these small loans because now they're doing units and numbers. What do you say to that?
Well, there are incentive to do units and there's incentive to do dollars. The question is on the complex transactions in small dollars, we hadn't thought through about should that receive a multiplier.
Wait a minute, hold on. A federal regulator, other than the Federal Reserve Chairman and the FDIC Chairman, the most powerful regulator arguably in the world, just admitted he didn't think through something, admitted theoretically a mistake of not perfect thought on camera? Oh my God, it's an abomination. Just shows you he's a really honest guy. I mean, he just said we hadn't thought through it completely. Now that it's been addressed,
We'll think through it.
hello, isn't that what you want? All right, let's do this lightning round of final misconceptions. This is one ratio. This is wrong.
It's not one ratio.
So that's wrong.
That's fine.
Okay,
Well, here's the way I think you
so
answer
this is
it.
not CRA by one ratio, which is the dollar amount.
Right, and that theme has been put out, but I mean, if you take a regional bank that has 250 assessment areas, in those assessment areas we'll measure.
By the way, English. What is
Yeah.
an assessment area?
The assessment area is a geographic area where a bank has branches.
Okay.
In that particular assessment area, we'll look at units and dollars, so that one assessment area will have two measures. Times the 250, that regional bank would have 500 measures. At the top of the house, we would look at total dollars, that's 501 measurement, and then we would put on examiner or judgment. That's 502 data points to come up with the final ruling.
Okay.
No,
Can't
not
be any
a
clearer. It's, we say to people, show us where it's one ratio.
Yeah, so we're at 12 minutes. I'm gonna try to get this. I'm gonna get this under 20 minutes, people. This increases redlining.
No.
No,
Not true.
You're the attorney.
Not true at all, because in order to qualify and receive CRA credit, you have
Say this
to
loud. Now.
you have to engage in activities that target LMI individuals, LMI areas, and other communities of need. Those are the population that generally get redlined. And so the CRA, through the lists that we will make sure the entire public gets to see, it is focused on those populations in the community. And so banks, in order to get credit at all, must in fact do reverse redlining. You have to target poor people to get credit.
Oh, but you guys are doing stadiums, and you can just fund the stadium, and you don't have to do anything else.
No. So.
You said no.
No.
No. No, she said no.
No.
That's better than no.
Because
You gotta be black to understand what that means.
the whole thing about the stadium, so it's important to understand that stadium showed up on the list of 200 items that you were just talking about. But this isn't a new list. This isn't a new creation. These are 200 things that have been given CRA consideration since 1993.
We could find stadiums back till 1993.
So this has never been written
Right.
down.
It's
Never been written down.
So this wasn't created by you.
No.
No.
And by the way, let's talk about stadiums. First of all, there are soccer stadiums, there are little league stadiums. We're not talking about necessarily NFL stadiums. By the way,
Community stadiums.
community stadiums,
High school.
high schools. But by the way, it could be also a legitimate reason to support a bank doing an NFL stadium if what?
It's in an LMI neighborhood.
And does what else?
And it creates housing, and it creates job, and it creates economic prosperity in that area.
Absolutely.
So low income housing around that stadium.
That's right.
Small business development around that stadium.
That's
What
right.
if it only gives jobs to the rich people's family and friends, and no jobs to the poor folks in the neighborhood?
That's one of the things we'd like comments on, but because if it's a stadium in a parking lot and it's $2 billion, I think all of us staying here would say, that's probably not meeting the intent of the law.
And guess who's gonna figure that out?
The
Examiners. through
Performance
contest.
contest. Even I'm getting this. Barry's proud of me. He's looking like, even I figured this
I
out.
finally taught that guy.
Yeah, it's only taken 27 years. And meanwhile, Brian's over there shaking his head. So if stadiums Brian, is there something I need to clarify, or are we good?
No, I think you're pretty good.
All right, so the thing about stadiums is a big deal. I had reporters calling me about it. I didn't have complete answers about it. I just assumed good intentions. But also in economic development, you want an anchor store in a mall. You want an anchor economic development. You want something to attract other capital. So, I mean, if you hire 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. You need somebody who's got resources and who would put something down that attract businesses and industry and whatever to want to rally around you. So that's not, it's not, we shouldn't just say, oh, it's a stadium.
Exactly.
It's for what purpose?
Right.
To what end?
And what does it do?
To what
The
impact?
ultimate impact
Right.
that it will have on the alumni community, which
Right.
is where many of these stadiums, the larger NFL type stadiums you're talking about, find their way into those neighborhoods anyway.
You mentioned, I don't want to get too wrapped up on this one, but you mentioned that when the JFK Stadium got abandoned,
RFK.
or the RFK Stadium got abandoned, that needs a magnet to come in there, and otherwise that whole area just sort of,
Continues to be on a decline.
yeah. And Janae, was there another stadium? You said Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
Was was
Brooklyn
it
Nets.
And that,
Brooklyn, was it
Brooklyn
basketball?
yeah, basketball.
That created economic activity
Yeah, it
around.
was
right?
a
Charlotte.
hardcore section that's in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And that area now is more jobs, there's more housing. It's definitely been an economic boost to a struggling area.
But a bank cannot just do a loan for a stadium and check the CRA box.
No,
That is not in a low to moderate income area.
No, let's go further.
And
That
that's
cannot
the
be the
impact.
only reason they get a satisfactory.
That's right.
No,
right.
they're,
Oh.
they're, again, it's just a
Units,
set of objective
checks,
measures.
dollars,
It's
and dollars,
units and
checks.
dollars,
See, yeah, forget
and
it.
performance context.
Right.
That's gonna make sure that the system is not being abused or gamed
Or
or
gamed.
anything.
A stadium would count as one loan if it was one stadium. It would be impossible to get a satisfactory rating.
From one single loan.
Did you hear that? It would be
Huge amount.
impossible, right? Okay, this is gonna lower the overall investment across America. So it's 480 billion now,
By
give or take.
investment, one of the big challenges with CRA today is there isn't a database where you can pull all the information, so you have to go through PEs. We were able
What's
to,
PEs?
performance evaluation.
Right.
We were able to determine that there was about $480 billion, but our viewpoint is by looking at every assessment area, that's gonna push more dollars out into a broader range. We also are allowing at the top of the house to family farms and Indian country to be supported by CRA. And then this concept of not having mortgages traded around, we think will actually cause people to do more investments as opposed to just buying mortgages that have already been originated.
But correct me if I'm wrong, also, there are these e-banks that up until now have only had an assessment area around
That's a good point.
their area. Now it'll be wherever they're taking deposits.
Not everywhere, but those internet banks that take 50% or more of their deposits outside their assessment areas, those markets we're proposing that have 5% or more, we'll call those assessment areas also.
Okay, can somebody translate that into English so that the audience can?
So what we have today and what we've had since 1977 is a geographic-based system to determine where banks have responsibility
Right.
to lend, invest, and provide service.
So you're in Utah, you have a responsibility around your branch.
Is wherever you have a physical branch,
Yeah,
your home office, or a deposit-taking ATM.
right.
Okay, so the thing that is a misperception, I think one you're gonna get to, is that we don't think branches count anymore.
Right.
But we're not doing anything to disrupt the current framework. All of those places geographically will still be considered assessment areas. But like I said earlier, in 1995, 1977, no internet, no ability to take deposits or do business where you don't have a physical location. So why wouldn't we want to have banks that are doing business where they don't have a physical location to also have a responsibility and obligation to lend, invest, and provide service
To low and moderate income people in those
other areas?
See, even I'm getting this.
So a good example is, I'm in Salt Lake City, 8% of my customers are in Los Angeles, 10% are in New York, 5% are in Dallas, but I'm doing all my CRA stuff in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
In the future, they will be doing CRA activities in Los Angeles, Dallas, and New York.
In addition
Right.
to Salt Lake City.
In addition,
So that sounds to me like more dollars, not less.
All right.
This eliminates examiner judgment. We sort of already covered this 14 times, but the answer is
no.
does not. Bank only has to pass in 50% of their assessment areas.
No,
No.
that's just not true. That's a question that we put out there so that we can get comments from people. As you said earlier, this whole, where we are in the process is we have an idea, we are subjecting it to public scrutiny, and we're hoping the public gives us feedback.
But I think the context around that, Val, is we look at 15 to 20%
Yeah.
of a bank's assessment areas today. We're proposing to look at 100% of a bank's assessment area in the future. And so what we've asked is, if we're only looking at 15% today, and you don't have to pass 100% today,
Right.
you can go from 15% to 50, and then we also said, should they have to pass 80?
That's
And,
right.
but we're asking for people's feedback.
Yeah, and so this is not a perfect process, it's a process.
Right.
And this is America, so you get to have your input. No one's shoving anything down your throat. So you get to have input. I'm not part of that. They're encouraging you to actually, as a citizen, I'm encouraging you to write letters and have input. And it's a beautiful thing. You get to have as much voice as anybody else. It's a beautiful thing.
So I'll just put it out there. We have comments that we're accepting on this proposal through March 9th. If you go to occ.gov/CRA, it will take you to the reg. It will take you to the link to submit a comment letter, and we encourage the public to give us their feedback. And we'll close the comment period on March 9th, and then work over the next few months after that to produce a final regulation after we've gotten the public input.
And I just want to, I guess, close out by just saying once again, I'm so excited about this thing about not gaming the system. I can't underscore this enough. Loans have got to be on the books of these institutions. You can't make a loan and sell it to somebody else and get credit, or play all these ghost games. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
now. Loans, the time of the loan on the books of the bank, not merely the money that they funded the loan with. How long that money was left there is what counts.
Yes. That's exactly
Very
right.
good job.
Hey, even I did it. So again, every good marriage is made of constructive friction. I want to thank again all the advocates, the legislators, the opinion makers, the media pundits, everybody who's had an opinion about this. You know, this is how you make America. This is how you advance the agenda. This is how you create a successful business plan for anything. Constructive friction, but it has to be constructive friction, not destructive friction, or not just friction. Okay. So with that, I think we're done. Any comments, Mr. Comptroller? You want to close us
No,
out?
I just think, John, thank you very much for allowing us to host this. I could not be more pleased about the progress that we've made, but we have a lot of progress yet to get done, and it'll be based upon the comments that we get, so thank you very much.
John Hope Bryant, this is the OCC first ever lightning round on anything probably ever since 1800 and something. But they probably should do more of this. All the government should probably do more of this. It's called transparency for the people. It's a beautiful thing, and I'm so proud of everybody in this room. You saw no scripts, you saw no notes, you just saw them talking to you straight. And if you have additional questions, put them in the comments. Keep it clean and respectful, and you'll get a response, I promise you. Or just go to them directly. John Hope Bryant, we're out.